occasionally called by somebody from inside. And what I think they're doing, first of all, one, we may be faking a UFO situation for reasons that I don't understand.
If we're making a UFO situation, do you think that there's technology that's available to people in the United States that is beyond our current understanding of what's possible?
90% no.
90% no.
Because
Wow.
it's very hard. It's very hard to imagine physicists continuing to work on nothing for their entire careers. The number of people who are going to be retiring shortly, having never actually done physics as a physicist, we're talking about wasted lives. People are going to be very weird when they realize that they blew their entire career. And I believe I can say what many of these problems are. And if you want to humiliate me at a leading university, just ask me to talk. You can put it on video. You don't realize how many things the standard model has subtly wrong when we explain it to people. Not that the Lagrangian is wrong, not that the rules are wrong, but we say wrong stuff. We say, like, there are 3 generations that are only of matter only distinguished by mass. In other words, there's 3 copies of this stuff here. This is like the wood version, and then there's the plastic version, and then there's the metal version. There aren't 3, there are 2 generations plus an extra imposter generation, which looks like a generation. I mean, I can get into these things. And that should be a provocation. Somebody says, let's call this guy, have him out, and figure out what he's talking about. Doesn't matter. I don't think we're doing physics.
What are you doing?
I think we are playing paintball rather than going to war, and we're giving prizes for generals who command the best paintball army. And then we're referencing everyone else who's actually trying to figure out how to fight to, well, have you submitted to the paintball competition? It's like, no, I don't want to do paintball. I understand that it keeps your skills up. I understand that some of them are transferable. But I mean, like, you've been in street fights?
Not since I was...
Yeah, well, I understand. Like, I haven't been for a long time. It's different than what you guys do, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's lots of stuff you're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Right. You get in a street fight, it's a completely different thing.
Sure.
What we're doing is not physics in the same sense.
So what they're doing is we're
doing safe stuff. Yeah, exactly.
They're exercising.
And the exercises are keeping people limber. They're keeping people in a fighting mentality. It's not that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has nothing to do with fighting. We've seen it, right? But small joint manipulation is part of street fighting. Eye gouging is part of street fighting. Knife is part of street fighting. These things are not part of any rebel gym that you might go to. So I want to do the thing that isn't paintball. And I didn't want to do it up until recently because the danger of unleashing a neutron on the world is so high. Now I realize I'm done with that. You guys are willing to play footsies, Putin? You're not going to survive. You're not the responsible adults that you were. Like, if I unleash a neutron and it leads to some sort of proliferation of deadly technology, it's on you. It's not on me. You're already taking risks that you can be taking.
So if you think 90% sure that this is not coming from here, you believe this because you don't think that the proper science in order to achieve these kind of results is being done by the people that you believe are capable of doing it?
That is correct. I know that, for example, when I talk to Nima, when I talk to Juan Maldacena, or when I've talked to Natty Seiberg, these people are absolutely brilliant, and they don't know the answer unless the greatest actors I've ever seen.
So those brilliant physicists are looking at these supposed videos. What is the best, most compelling?
Sorry, UFO stuff.
What are you talking then?
They're not talking about things that can extend Einstein.
Right.
Therefore, to get back to your technology question, might have engineering applications, because it's the engineering applications that are terrifying.
Right.
The discovery of the neutron was one thing. The Teller-Ulam design was its weaponization. So suddenly, you can do the Tsar bomb or Castle Bravo, these unbelievable explosions. Like, the difference between there were Civil War veterans who saw action in the Civil War, who lived to see Ivy Mike in the Pacific. So the Civil War was almost a thermonuclear war in terms of human scale. It's less than 100 years different. People have forgotten how terrifying, important, wonderful jaw-dropping and awesome physics because it hasn't done anything that completely screws your mind.
Like Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
Or Castle Bravo.
With Castle Bravo.
That was the test in Pacific where we thought it was going to be like controlled and like, or what is it, Starfish, where we did an atmospheric explosion over Hawaii, and then the Russians like, hold my beer, Nova Zemlya. You know, we remember, I'm the guy 5 years ago who was saying we need above ground nuclear test because all you people have lost your fear. Like, yes, Eric is crazy, but he's correct.
What's this one? That's Castle Bravo. Oh my God.
Right. Like,
so they detonated in that facility and they expected it to be far smaller than it was?
You know, they detonated in the Pacific.
Right. But it's right next to that facility that was in the video.
Yeah.
Was that the facility that was initially filmed? Like, what?
Yeah.
What is this facility?
That's it. It was Inawak, I forget, Atoll. So, like,
it's crazy how long ago that was and how close it was to the Civil War, if you really put it in that context.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say is what I'm trying to tell you.
Look at that. That's so insane.
Have you done this in Oculus?
No, I have not.
I highly recommend, if they're not going to do a nuke above ground so that we can save ourselves by fear.
Look at that.
Right, this is religious stuff, Joe.
Yeah, it is religious
like
stuff.
We have announced, if somebody is linked to these tests that we did, my belief is very shortly before you get the ability to traverse the cosmos, if that is possible, you let off a nuke. Right? It's like, you know, you've had kids. There's some stuff that happens right before they figure out how to break out of the crib.
You know, that's part of UFO folklore too. Fat Man and Little Boy. That's a big part of UFO, that once they dropped those, that's when all the UFOs started appearing.
So the question is you know, the analogy of, so I talked to Avi about the following thing. I am a fan of something called the doubly scientific method. The usual science method makes a hidden assumption that it never voices. If we're going to study orcas, we assume that we are smarter than orcas. Or if we're going to study cephalopods, right, like an octopus, I think we're smarter. And what do? We disguise ourselves. We create artificial environments. We do all sorts of crazy things based on the fact that we're smarter than what we study, from rocks to orcas. The doubly scientific method says, okay, assume that you're studying a rat in a maze. You yourself are the rat in somebody else's maze. Now you have to up the intelligence scale, not just down. In the doubly scientific method, you have to assume that whatever is studying you is hiding from you the way you are hiding from your subjects. So if you see somebody in a duck blind, for example, and he's studying ducks, you understand that somebody may be hiding from you. And they might be able to use multiple dimensions of time. They might be able to cloak themselves and disguise themselves. Or for example, if you take microscopic UFOs, this cup has a radius of r and a circumference of 2 pi r. The disk that it stands is pi r squared in area. But if you look at this cup, it's larger than pi r squared because we pushed it out. You could have a sphere where if you could cheaply engineer space-time, not through the Einstein field equations, but through the successor theory that recovers Einstein, you could have an entire stadium inside of a tennis ball. Just the way this cup doesn't blow your mind until you realize that its area is much greater than pi r squared. Why look for a giant floating thing in the sky? If you could space and time and you could play with the rulers the way I'm saying, I would put this in a tiny little profile.
Whoa. So we're only looking at, in terms of our understanding of the distance between objects, planets, gravity. We're looking at that. All that stuff where if it didn't exist, if somehow or another we lived in some contained environment and we had no concept of space whatsoever, and then we gained access to it, we would be unbelievably overwhelmed. If you lived in some sort of underground facility your entire life,
love this,
and then one day you got a chance to go outside and see the Keck Observatory in Hawaii in a clear night with no moon, you would be overwhelmed. You wouldn't be able to believe that the world was as big as it really was, or that the universe was as big as it was.
Yeah, impedance mismatch. If you watch meteor showers the way my family does, It's religious. It's transformation, transcendent. The problem, as you know, from the default mode network, right, is that mostly what your brain is doing is not communicating information, but screening. Right, your eyes, your fovea is precious because that's the thing that can resolve at very high levels.
Yeah.
But like, I can barely see Jamie out of the corner of my eye because my peripheral vision can't be at the same level as my fovea. I'd be overwhelmed.
Right.
So we're talking about tapping to a picture of the world that we are not. Our brain is not prepared for the idea that time is multi-dimensional. That was the whole point of giving Lex another watch. Don't have a way to think about. I'll meet you at 5:15 and 12:30, according to two different scales of time. Or for example, time and space, if I'm correct, the 14-dimensional manifold that has all the quantum going on it is split probably 7 and 7 dimensions because we have 6 extra time dimensions and 4 extra space. Add 6 to 1 and 3 to 4, and you get 7. So space and time are interchangeable. There's a duality between them. All of this stuff is like, okay, it's how you hit on chicks in a bar. Hey, let me tell you something about space and time you never thought about.
Oh my God.
But,
does that work?
What? Worked for me.
Do you think, now when you were talking about these people that keep mananaing you and not giving you access to whatever they're talking about, do you think they're talking about some sort of an engineering solution to this type of technology?
I haven't met any striking distance in 3 years.
So how have something that you don't, that's going to change your way of looking? Is it possible that you've missed something?
I'd be wrong. First of all, like this is my life's work.
What's
right?
the way they use it to you? It changing the way you see the world.
Eric, like I'll complain about data and like that's not the data we have. What we've been to public is downsampled, meaning that it's fuzzier, it's low resolution. Like how clear is it? As clear as you want. How clear are you that there's something you can see it with your own eyes? There's no question.
Dude, if I was just shut the fuck up and let them show me, I'd be like, let's go.
I'm not under any NDA.
I'm saying,
but you want to.
I want to know.
You want to know in a different look. My life's work is a theory. It's one theory. Entire life is really about one theory. Okay, like I do this entertainment thing and I talk to people and all this stuff. Bullshit. Really, what I am is an academic who realized that you can't do academics inside of the university system and watch it disintegrate into madness as we speak. I figured this out a long time ago. I want to know whether this is right or wrong so much more than I want to know whether UFOs exist. UFOs, to me, are an indication of whether I'm right or wrong. You see, it's data. It's an input to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
so if you're right, that means...
If future, it means we can leave, not the planet, but the solar system. We can explore, the cosmos are traversable. If we can leave, anything else can visit. If you look at the entirety of the universe and you imagine that ultimately there are societies that destroy themselves because they get weapons before they figure out how to leave. Some societies are smarter than that. And they'll be able to leave and colonize the cosmos. And for them not to be here would be mad.
So when did you get interested in the subject of UFOs?
That happened at a surprisingly early age. I was 7 years old at a boarding school, and the principal of the school, an old reel-to-reel Kodak movie camera, taking a home movie of a video, UFO flying in cumulus clouds, huge golden disc that comes into the picture and banks, goes into a cloud, and it disappears into this sort of very, very hard, I think, to fake somehow, particularly in those days with no computer-generated imagery. And it comes to the other side and then sort of goes off over the horizon. And I was, stunned and flabbergasted, and myself and all the kids ran outside that night and were looking at the stars, and it just sparked my curiosity, a lifelong curiosity.
Once you got into government, and once you were there, you're basically there, you had to start asking questions like, did you wait a while? Like, how long did you ask for? You're like, hey, what do you guys know?
Yeah, well, for a long time I waited. Very rarely. I looked for openings. I looked for opportunities. So, for example, the stigma is so great that you're reluctant, obviously, to raise that issue. A couple times there were some natural opportunities. So one of my colleagues on the Intelligence Committee was going to Hawaii for some oversight trips, meetings, and he went to the Maui space op tracking facility. And I said to him, while you're there, why don't you just check and see, do they ever see anything weird they can't explain, and so forth. So he did, and Pete called me up and said, I can't believe this, I've got this video here, and it shows these weird things. And so I talked to the Air people, they sent the tape to us. Turns out it was totally unclassified. I showed it to Cohen and some others, and it ended up on Nat TV, actually, but didn't generate any other response. Everybody just kind of threw their hands up in the air and said, well, that's interesting, but we don't know what it was. Ted Koppel's Nightline show that this tape was played on. It showed sort of 5 objects moving parallel to the ground, possibly in formation. They're in the atmosphere because they're burning, they're interacting with something, plasma coming off of, which wouldn't presumably be in space, but they seem to be too slow to be meteorites. It was mystifying and difficult to explain, never did get an answer. Occasionally something like that, but by and large, the issue almost never arose.
The issue is a weird issue because if you bring it up in the wrong company or at the wrong time, you could be dismissed as a loon. Did you feel that when you were there? Like as a person who had a budding interest in unidentified flying objects and what have you, did you feel like this is a politically risky thing to discuss, especially to discuss like in serious terms? Like, do you believe in these things? Like, what are they? What do we know? Was that an issue?
Absolutely. I concealed my interest in the topic for years and very carefully, and confided a few trustworthy friends, had a few heart-to-heart talks with a couple individuals when I found a fellow tour who was interested in this topic, but by and large, absolutely wanted to conceal that and not reveal that.
Did you know Clinton?
No, I did not.
He would be the guy that I would go to.
There was a request that came to me once that I think was from President Clinton, and it is one of the astronauts claimed to have seen a UFO out at Edwards Air Force Base, and it was videotaped, he said, and he described in his memoir and wanted the president to get hold of the tape, of the video. And Secretary Cohen came back to the Pentagon from a meeting and messaged down to me to go to try to find this tape. And unfortunately, there was, I got nowhere with it. Air Force was adamant that there was no such tape, there was no such information, anything that UFOs have been destroyed. So I had one of these situations that's very common in this area, which is you have just two apparently credible sources, but utterly conflicting, irreconcilable information, which seems to happen often in this field.
Being as you were in government and very close to literally the machine that runs the world, what's the general perception when people are discussing these things in Washington? What's the general perception of what's going on with these things?
I'm happy to say that it's changed. That perception has changed considerably in the last few years. People feel like they have permission to talk about it. And after the New York Times article and subsequent press, beginning in 2017, and that sort of gave people permission to talk about this. And I've actually had Pentagon friends who said, this is kind of cool. We don't have to go in the closet to talk about this.
Kept it in the closet before. Like, when did the stigma start? And do you think this was like intentionally sort of set up this way?
It was. It was the Roberts Panel Commission, 1953, and they concluded during those cold days that this was a potential threat to national security because UFO reports might overwhelm our air defense and communication system, and that the Soviets might spook the public and somehow manipulate this issue. So they actually advocated writing that this should be debunked and discredited, and the government went ahead and did so. extremely successfully, unfortunately.
And this started with the Project Blue Book, correct?
Correct. It was during that era.
So what was the gentleman's name that was running Project Blue Book again?
Well, they were the
on
astronomer, Alan Hynek.
Hynek.
Yeah.
And Hynek went on to become a believer. So he started debunking and was told, essentially, the way he reported it was that he was told to kind of debunk every single case. Everything he could find, whether it was swamp gas or, ball lightning, find some way to explain this away. But then once he left Project Blue Book, he started openly discussing these cases, and he started discussing his own belief.
Correct. And he felt, because he was trying to carry out his mandate that the Air Force had given him. As you may recall, in one instance, he went to Michigan and famously declared that the people were misconstruing swamp gas for flying jets.
Yeah.
And so Gerald Ford, who was representing that, as did the local population, and Congress took a fleeting, and Dr. Hynek was very embarrassed, and understandably so. It was really insulting to these people who had very clear sight. So he did eventually change his view publicly. And
I was doing my first documentary back in 1997 when I was just naive enough to think I can get an interview with Steven Spielberg. We had a mutual friend involved, this woman, Janet, and she gets back to me and she's like, yeah, so Spielberg's definitely not going to meet with you, but he knows you're working on this UFO documentary. He thinks you should look into this landing case that happened in Africa at the school. And I said to myself at the time, and remind you guys that I was making a film on UFOs, and I dismissed it so quickly because I thought there's no way that a mass landing with the sheer volume of eyewitness testimony at a school in broad daylight could happen and the whole world not know about it. So I just walked away from that story for about 10 years. 10 years later, I'm doing an event at the National Press Club with Leslie Kean, who was part of the article in the New York Times that came out in 2017. And she introduced me to this guy, Randall Nickerson. And she's like, oh, he's working on this landing case in Africa. Long story short, he's working on a film now. I think it's coming out next year, specifically on just that case. Dan Farah is producing it. And he said, I'm working on the case, and if you want to do something with me on it, a small piece, I could. So I got back into it. I licensed some of the footage that Dr. John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist that came and interviewed the school children on camera within a week of it happening. He unfortunately looked the wrong way in London, got run down by a car and died. So I contacted the Institute with the help of Randall Nickerson. I licensed the archival footage. We tracked down the witnesses today. We flew them in from all different corners of the world, brought them together. A lot of them were standing right next to each other. They came face to face, and one of the things I've realized was that there were roughly 100 kids in the playground, broad daylight, aerial school, Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 1994, and they got within arms, some of them within arm's length of these beings, and brought these witnesses together for the first time in 20 years. And a lot of them hadn't even told their significant others, just because they said they were tired of having to defend this. And I myself didn't believe it when I first heard about it back in 1997. And that segment of the film is the most, in my opinion, is the most powerful segment, because
it's very compelling.
You've got all these children saying what they saw on camera after it happened, and then you see them 20 years later, and then we go to Africa and we meet with the headmistress. She was a teacher at the time. We meet with other witnesses. We go to the landing site. We talk to people at the school. That case is absolutely, and it was witnessed by lots of other people in and around the area for several days before it chose a school to land. Steven?
It's so telling because the children are all clearly, they're not actors. So as they're adults later, they're all talking about this moment, and it's like they had a religious experience together. Like they're all sharing it and talking about it, and you could tell it's like it's a deeply moving experience. If they were actors, they wouldn't have been able to do such a good job, because to convey the reality of that moment to them, to be able to have this interpretation of this event where they're all consistent in the story and they're all clearly still shook by this moment. It's really interesting because if you had that scene in a movie, it would take like a really good actor to pull it off. And they'd probably need multiple takes. They'd probably want to get the best one. But those kids, the way they were talking about it and the way they were drawing it, you're like, wow, it really does seem like something happened to them.
I know how credible the testimony of the children is because my partner, Rebecca, she's never had much of an interest in what I do, making documentaries on UFOs. I do other things as well, but when I was reviewing in the studio the archival interview of the children, she just dropped off a cup of coffee and she stopped and went, "Oh my God, those children are not lying. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen." Because look, I ask your audience to don't take it from me. Just suspend judgment for a moment and imagine, hypothetically, if a UFO or several UFOs landed at a school in broad daylight in Rua, Zimbabwe, Africa, and interacted telepathically with nearly 100 school children. Not all of them had telepathic, but seeing the incident. How significant of a story would you give that?
Well, not only that, the same message.
Yes.
What the telepathic message was that technology is a real problem.
Yes.
And there's things that people are doing with technology that are going to ruin the earth.
Yes.
And they were trying to relay this to children, which is very strange.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I mean, maybe they just thought they were adults because they were the same size as the aliens. I mean, do you think they knew that they were children? Do you think they understood that it was a school? I mean, this is all speculation, right?
But no, I definitely had to ask myself, look, during the production of the film, Paula Harris actually turned me on to another landing case that happened in Australia in 1966 at a school. And this time there were roughly 300 witnesses that saw a disc land right outside a playground in Australia. And we went to Australia and investigated that case, went to the landing site, talked to eyewitness testimony, people that jumped the fence at the school playground and ran over to where this thing landed. And then we even interviewed a guy who snapped a photograph of a disc, a Polaroid, back in 1966, 2 days prior to the incident. So it's very probably that we have photographic evidence, we have eyewitness testimony, and for the first time we've got testimony from a science teacher. So why do these things land at schools? It seems like, and I'm just totally speculating here, but it seems like if I were going to do that, it seems like a pretty benign environment. When we have testimony from military guys that we take a fairly hostile position towards things that penetrate sensitive military installations. And, so maybe, I'm just saying maybe
It's safe.
Maybe it's safe.
Maybe
but
it's safe.
we have to stop reacting to intrusions by UFOs as a threat. I mean, that's the whole thing behind this new task force. And as much as I respect, the task force, my colleagues and I want to cooperate with them to the extent that we can bring information or resources to what they do. But there is more. This should not be looked at specifically as a threat. I mean, with the phenomena that we observe, I mean, if they wanted to blow up those F-18s, they could do it, okay? Obviously, that's not what it's all about. And this idea of just labeling it all as a threat because it's unknown, that's a wrong idea. 90% of the information comes from the public, comes from children, and very, very little of it is made up. In France, I mean, the data we get, at the French Space Agency comes through channels where if people reported something that's found to be untrue, they are going to be called by the police.
Following and pleading with them all the way out there. Please, just tell us, please. I swear on my life this happened. He gets in the car, doors open. He looks up, and the only reason why I'm telling you this guide, he looks up at Marco and I, and he goes, "It happened." Closed the door, and off he went. Now, the reason why I share that is that's not something that I can put any weight on for the documentary for people like you, right? But as a personal message for me, knowing that level of validation on the inside, it kept us going. It was like, okay, why on earth would he have done that? Why on earth would he say? And that kept Marco and I going, and that was a personal level of validation. That
is there any conventional explanation why the military shut everything down, why they had military barricades set up around that area?
No, I did try to say that the creature was this guy who's got like some deformities, but I've seen the guy Modine or something like that. But you talk to the witnesses.
But why would the military shut them down? Because a guy with deformities.
And then for the doctors in the huddle, they said, there was like a midget having a baby or something weird. It was just so ridiculous. It was like, and you talk to the witnesses, and they're just like, oh, come on, I'm not even gonna, that's laughable at best. I mean, these girls came within 8 to 10, three women, Katya, sisters, Liliani, and Valkyria, 14, 16, and 20. They got within 8 to 10 feet in broad sight of this creature. And one of the things that doesn't come across in the film, when they saw this thing, they're looking like, what are we looking at? Walking through this field, and it's up against a cinder block wall. And one of them was looking at it, what is that? And it was crouched by the wall. It was feeble. And one of them kind of like screeched, like, what is that? And it turned, and it looked right at the girls, locked eyes on them. Lana grabs her younger sister, who's 14, Valkyria, and hightails it out of there. Katya is 21. She's frozen in her tracks, locked eyes with this creature, and it's communicating with, please help me. He wants help. It's weak, and it's feeble, and it's scared, and it's crouched down. Liliani realizes that Katya is back there. She gets, 100 from the path. She leaves her sister, stay here, I'm going back to get Katya. She runs back. And I asked all the girls, during that moment of contact, when you lock eyes, I know it's only a brief second, but during that moment of contact, what did you feel? Like, put me there. That's where the title comes from, moment of contact, because it's when they locked eyes on this creature. And that's when Katya said, help me, I'm scared. And it was feeble and suffering. And it's a very full moment. And these girls have been saying the same thing. The mother, it's the first time I'd ever reported on these so-called in dark suits that show up and intimidate witnesses. Honestly, I've been about those cases for so many times, but I've avoided them because it's got so much bad from Men in Black. It's just ridiculous. I just didn't even want to be associated with it. But I'd heard it. I can go on until I'm blue in the face. I go till tomorrow morning with the amount of cases with generals too. But time when the mother said that these men showed up and tried to get the daughters to say they were lying and offered her a briefcase full of $100 bills, could relocate. I don't know. For some reason, I said, okay, first time in 25 years, I'm going to report on these guys. And I did. And it's in the movie. You can hear the mother talking about it, and she's so emotional. And the mother came to the location right after it happened. The smell, that stench, and the footprint on the ground. I mean, everybody talks about that stench. It was so... They said, if you ever take like a skunk, multiply that by like 100,000, that would give you some indication of the level of like how putrid and nasty. It was paralyzing. And it stayed in the areas, like at the hospitals when they did the accident. Everybody talks about it. That stench, it's unbelievable. Like it fills your navel cavities and doesn't leave for a week. Incredible. And then they all said the same thing.
And they couldn't get out.
They couldn't get it out. Yeah, they sanitized the hospital. The guy said that he had to close off that wing of the hospital while they were sanitizing it because it was so intense. So
How long did it for?
Days and weeks is what I heard from people. And even the mother said when she went to where the creature was, she said that the stench, even there after the creature was gone, got in her nasal cavity, tried to flush it out with water and saline or whatever, and she just couldn't get it out of her nasal cavities. Really crazy. But they all did. I mean, everybody talked about that stench. I mean, the military officer, the guy that drove the creature around, I was sitting across from him. You can't see his face, but I did. And I'm looking this guy in the eyes. I'm thinking, I could be looking at a guy that drove a fucking alien around. You have no idea, dude. You have no idea.
How did he describe it?
So fucking intense. When I came back from that trip, people were like, how was your trip to Brazil? What was it like, man? They got great, smoothies and coffee. And I'm just like, you guys have no idea. I think an alien spaceship crashed and they recovered live aliens. And we made contact and the Americans came in. That's what I'm thinking about. So I told a couple people. On the last trip I came back, I was just like, I was so rocked. I couldn't integrate back into the culture. I was just like, I think this happened. It's the biggest story ever. So people were asking me, even my neighbor who runs that Make-A-Wish Foundation, he was like, James, bro, I like you a lot and I got a lot of respect for you, but you have me on this one. And I was like, I don't blame you, bro. I really don't. But listen to the witnesses. Just, that's all I say. Just, and I would tell people, and I realized I can't talk about it. All I can say is just listen to the witnesses, don't to me. But I'm looking at that guy in the eyes, Joe. I've been at this for 30 years. I've made I'm working on my 7th right now. I'm looking this guy in the eyes, and I'm like, this guy probably alien around. And it tripped me out so hard. And it ruined his life. He's to get this guy to go on camera, just like a week earlier, he was, I don't care all the money in the world, I'm never coming forward. The risk's too high.
How did it ruin his life?
Because you're harboring this secret. You're being watched. You're being told not to ever talk about this. And you're looking over your shoulder all the time. And they call you, the military calls you periodically. They want to know where you are. And he's got a secret inside him that he can't tell the rest of the world. And he's about all the different, everyone's out there speculating, is it real, is it real, is it fake? And this guy drove a body around. Just think about that for a second. Think about the doctor, the x-rays of this thing. Marco Leal, you Marco, you're the man. Marco Leal found him 8 years ago. And he was like, he confirmed the story. He was still working at regional hospital. He goes, I'll never come forward. Marco kept going every year back and forth. Then he retired. And 4 years after he retired, he agreed to meet with us. He wasn't even sure to go on. And I said, look, man, we'll film you from the back. We'll disguise your voice. Showed us photographs of him at the hospital. We know we've been trying to get at him. Excuse me. At the end of the interview, he said, thank you. I feel so much better. Been shouldering that burden for 26 years, and I've so desperate to tell somebody, to share that story with the rest of the world. And these people, and you think, why on earth they didn't come to us? They're not trying to sell their story. We tracked them down and pleaded with them to come forward. When I found Martha, the sister of the deceased military officer, Marco Chirizi, we were knocking on doors. I remember the sound guy from Rio de Janeiro. He was like, you're out of your mind, dude. What are you doing? You can't just knock on random doors. I was like, man, if there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to find this lady. And we found her. And it was like this kind of sketchy area. And, you know, it's like when you get out of your car and you see like people drawing the curtains back and looking at you and you're standing out. Like, dude, I stood out like a sore thumb, man. And then we walked up. I had Marco with me, thank God. And we had camera crews and stuff. It's kind of sketchy. And Marta appears, and her husband appears in this he's a big guy, and he's got like a white beater shirt, and he looks like he wants to rip my fucking head off. I'm like, and she's looking at me, and he's just looking at her going, Marta's looking at her husband, and her husband's looking at Marta like, give me the signal, I'll kill this guy. That's the fucking, and I was looking at, I was like, James, you need to think quick on your feet right now. And I immediately, please translate this, I'm here to give your brother justice. I'm here to get the story out. Please, talk to me. And we developed a relationship with her slowly over that. And those are the first words that we exchanged. And we eventually got her to come forward, and we talked. She'd gone forward in the past, but she doesn't know who the hell I am.
I want to take you back to the doctor.
Okay.
When you talked to the doctor, what did he describe?
He said that it was a normal day, January 1996. It was a regional hospital. Said every day, and all of a sudden, all these military trucks and police cars showed up at the hospital. Come in, armed, and they got a bag, a thing in a black body bag. And he was like, what the hell's going on here? They're like, you're going to be taking some x-rays. And he's like, okay. And they had him inside, and they had armed guards. And I was asking him, like, what was it like? Because when I interview witnesses, I always ask them to project. Like sometimes I'll even close my eyes because I'll use their word to recreate. So I'm like living it through them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'll close my eyes and I'll recreate the scenes in my head with their words, right? It's harder in Portuguese because I'm having to get it translated. But I ask questions. What was the atmosphere like? Was there any talking? No talking. Super tense atmosphere, very tense. Armed guards on the outside, armed guards on the inside, military trucks surrounding. Nobody goes. And he said, first time in my history of my career, I took the x-rays and I couldn't even verify that they were good because they took them immediately. And then they said this event never happened. The stench in the hospital was overwhelming. And he goes through the different x-rays that he took, the abdomen, the head, the arms, the legs, the thorax, and it's incredible. In fact, Ubarajada Rodriguez, if you're listening to this, he's one of the researchers that's gone quiet. Peccacini disappeared for 20 years.
Did he get to see images himself? Did he get to see the body himself?
Oh, he was right. Well, they didn't open the bag, but he said the stench was just overwhelming.
So they through the body bag?
They x-rayed it through the body bag. He did not see the alien.
And he didn't get to see the x-ray images or anything?
Nope. They wouldn't let him see a damn thing. Nope. Now, there were two doctors. There was a guy named Roger Lear. Roger Lear found, these are people that I really want to meet. I mean, people are coming forward in droves now. We just got two forensic pathologists for the first time working together to come forward to make statements, and they're providing documentation of the autopsy reports done on the deceased military officer. That's the first time ever these guys are coming forward, and it's happening right now.
Let's explain what happened to people who haven't watched the documentary to the deceased military officer.
Yeah, so right after the Thurls came within 8 to 10 feet of this creature, or being, or entity, or ET, whatever you want to call it, about an hour later, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would say probably maybe around 5 o'clock, there were two military guys on patrol, on the lookout for something unusual, is what they were told. They didn't say a UFO had crashed. They were on the lookout for something highly unusual. And it was Eric Lopes at the wheel and Marco Chirizi, military police, in the passenger seat. They were about 1.5 blocks to 2 blocks away from where the girls had creature a couple of hours earlier. And this thing runs across the car in front of them. He had slammed his brakes on, and without a hesitation, Marco Chirizi jumps out of the car and grabs the thing with his bare hands. Yeah. And he puts it in the back. They drive it to a clinic, and the doctor is like, what the hell is that? Get it out of here. I don't know what, leave. So they went to regional hospital, and then ultimately it went to Humanitas Hospital. And so we have money from Military X that when he drove it from Humanitas Hospital, it's in the movie, but he drove it from Humanitas Hospital to as a military base where it spent the night in the truck for one night, and then from there to Espesex Campinas. It's like a university. It's where all the intellectual scientific heavyweights reside. And then it was there, I think, under examination, according to the witnesses that we talked to, for a day or two, and that's when the Americans flew in to Campinas. And we have our military control officer who came forward last year, actually 2 years ago when we were there filming for the last time. His name is Marco Feres, F-E-R-E-S. And he came forward for the first time. He said, yeah, in January of 1996, this plane came in, USAF, he kept calling it, United States Air Force, came in. It didn't have the authorization of the Brazilian government. He was like, this thing can't land. And some higher-up stepped into the room. This is his testimony. I'm just relaying what he said. Some higher-up came in the room and said, let it land. And it came and it landed in Campinas. And then from Campinas, 2 helicopters, according to him, flew to Varginha, Brazil, Varginha back to Campinas. Then they loaded something on the airplane and then off to the United States. And that's where the
Les Stroud.
Yeah.
So he did that show about
Survivor Man Bigfoot, yeah.
But it just went away.
Bro, show. I love Les Stroud. I love him. I love Survivor Man. That show was so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
He had a guy on the show that is known in the Bigfoot world as being full of shit.
Yeah.
Which is bad. Like, if the Bigfoot world's pretty open-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up about that 411 to Hunted thing. There's audio recording that was supposedly taken from the 1970s from Northern California. I want to say Sonoma? I don't remember where it was. It was somewhere in Northern California, but they call them the samurai sounds. The samurai, and it's the weirdest shit ever, man. It's like these guys had this spot that they would go into the mountains, and they would hunt every year. And they built this structure out there, and then they brought recording equipment, and they claimed to have recorded sounds of these animals, these Bigfoot, and that these Bigfoot were around them all the time while they were up there. Now, what's crazy about it is the sounds are so weird. It sounds like someone pretending to be Japanese that doesn't actually speak Japanese. Yeah. Have you ever heard it? No. We'll play it for you. It's because it's the weirdest shit. It sounds so strange and so fake, but, like they have these quote-unquote experts that say the human voice is not capable of making sounds remotely similar to this. The range is which doesn't make any sense if you know who Michael Winslow is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know.
That guy
Yeah.
that guy went on.
He does a woman peeing when she goes to the bathroom.
He does everything.
Yeah, he does everything.
He did Led Zeppelin. He played Whole Lotta Love with his mouth.
Yeah.
And it sounds incredible. But this samurai sound, like, there's these loud whoops, whoops, and these guys are like in the foreground, you know, like the guys who are recording, they're trying to communicate with these things. They sound so calm. I mean, if there really was giant fucking 8-foot apes out there wandering around like 200-300 yards away from you, screaming and whooping and talking, would you really, and you're in the woods, would you really be so calm? Wouldn't you be freaking the fuck out?
Oh, yeah.
These guys, do you have it?
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I find the right thing because I'm stumbling across some traps.
Oh,
It's like people are fucking around the internet.
I wish I could remember the gentleman's name.
Well, I think I have it. Is all I'm saying. So, Ronald J. Moorhead and Alan Berry, maybe, is that right?
Yes, Ron Moorhead. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's it. The Sierra Mountains. That's what it is.
All right.
And so, it's the weirdest shit ever. Just listen to this. You're gonna.
I read what it could be, but we'll listen first.
It could be bullshit.
Yeah,
That's what
well.
it could be.
That sounds like
No,
something
no.
all aboard.
Listen. This is hold on. Stop. This is a terrible version
Yeah,
of it.
wow.
There's a better version of it where you can hear the guys really clearly. The people talking. Why that's so scratchy. But they're like, they're over by the lake. Like they're talking like that. And they hear this very strange sound.
And they're being calm about it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
these, supposed vocal experts are analyzing it. The human body is incapable of making such sounds. And that area of... You got it?
I don't know. It says HD. I don't
Okay,
know if
we'll
it's
hear it.
better.
In for Nightville.
Yeah. They're knocking. That's another thing that Sasquatch do. They knock. That one's weird. Scoot ahead a little bit and hear the samurai sounds. Still sounds terrible. Anyway, these people believe that Les Stroud was balls deep in this.
With that guy.
Deep. Apparently, he had an experience, and I talked to him about his experience. It's pretty interesting. He was in, not with that guy, but he was in Alaska, and apparently he heard some crazy noises, like some monkey sounds outside of his, in the middle of nowhere. No one was anywhere near, and he said he heard something run away, some bipedal sound of something running away. But again, even though he's an experienced woodsman, and he's a guy who's, camped out countless nights in the middle of nowhere and survives in the middle of nowhere and documents it. Like, he's the reason why those survivor shows exist.
Yeah.
Because that guy literally would starve to death and try to eat, like, bark and whatever the fuck he could for 7. You could see his face, like, sinking in. He was losing weight. I mean, he really did do that. He did all sorts of different things to try to survive and then documented how he was doing it and what he would do. But he got obsessed with Bigfoot and then developed that Bigfoot show. And unfortunately, a lot of people lost a lot of faith in him because of that. They're like, no, you're the legit survivor guy, and now you're doing this show, and this is why it's ridiculous. There was one episode of the show where they had this guy who he was with who had video of a Sasquatch, like high definition video, and it looks so fake.
Yeah.
It's like he's like the Sasquatch is looking at him through the woods, and he's like, there he is. And it's a guy with a mask on.
That's how he goes. He yells out, "I'm a Sasquatch." You're like, oh god, he just yelled that out.
Oh, yeah. Makes the samurai noise.
Bigfoot.
But this, the guy who had the video is known to be like full of shit, and here he's got this guy on his show, and then he, is this real? You be the judge. Like, yeah, I'm gonna say it's not real. It's a guy with a fucking mask on.
I think I did that guy was very not respected.
Yes,
in that
by the Bigfoot community.
Yeah.
The Bigfoot community, again, very open-minded.
Yeah, very just everything.
Was other like they would see trees that would fall over like in certain patterns, and they were convinced that Sasquatch was leaning these trees against each other.
I thought it was to let you know where not to go.
Yeah. They had this idea. I mean, it's all theory, right? This idea.
Yeah, I think I've been following the wrong guy, dude. I believe all stuff that you like's fake. I'm like, yeah. I only watched that Les Stroud one because of that other guy.
Well, I want to be real. That's the thing.
I do too.
If someone had a convincing Bigfoot encounter where they caught it on video, where I was like, holy shit, what is that? Like, what is that? Or there was something, but there's nothing. Like, I've talked to a lot of those people when I did this show called Joe Rogan Questions Everything for Sci-Fi, and me and Duncan Trussell actually went camping in the Pacific Northwest. We didn't really camp. We pretended to go camping, and then we went to a hotel.
Yeah.
And then we came back the next morning, like, well, rough night of camping. But we were out there for days trying to look for Sasquatch and talking to people that hunt for Sasquatch. And the one conclusion that we came to is it's a bunch of unfuckable white dudes. Like, that's
just out there. Yeah.
Just out there camping.
Yeah.
It's just, but the desire for it to be real is so strong.
It would change. I watched, like that Finding Bigfoot show. I used to always think, because people are like, why is it on? I'm like, I don't know, man, because it's fun to watch. And if they find him, the world is different now. Like, if they come back with Bigfoot, everything's different.
Everything's different.
Everything's getting different with the alien thing.
Yeah.
The fact that they're saying that's like true, you're like, it's a lot, dude. That's a lot to take. If we get, I know that they have the videos and stuff of the aliens, but like if we get up straight up start talking to one, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, here's something that came out today, Jamie. I'm going to send you this because Sagar and Jetty from Rising on the Hill and I have been going back and forth with this, and I found this today and sent it to him. It's I'll send it to you right now, Jamie. It says paradigm shifting UFO tech that alters space-time is operable. U.S. Navy Chief Tech Officer. So it's some story that I didn't bother looking into because I saw it when I was on my way out the door, and I was like, what in the fuck is this? Because there's been all these sightings of these things that move in a weird way. I'm shifting UFO tech. There's these things that move in this weird way that don't show any propulsion system, and due to censorship, please join us on Telegram. I'm going to say, documents obtained by the Drive show the revolutionary technology that has capability to alter space-time may actually be operable, according to the Naval Aviation Enterprise Chief Technology Officer, Dr. James, how do you say that name? Sheehy?
Why
what do you
is
think?
operable in quotes? What is that?
I don't know. Good question. Reflect on why is technology that has the potential to change the entire human experience for the better always used for the defense purposes and military applications? What are the betterments? What about the betterment of humanity? Yeah. I don't know. But it's Christopher Mellon, who's that guy who keeps coming up with all this UFO tech stuff. Can you scroll back up, please?
Someone's just like writing. I was reading through Twitter. It's like a story. It's not really like an article.
Right. Twitter feed of Christopher Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary for Intelligence from 1997 to 2002. Doing so, I came across an interesting post from the Drive regarding documents they received via the Freedom of Information Act regarding a space-time modification weapon developed by the U.S. Navy, which apparently has already gone through experimental testing. This in turn led me to evidence suggesting that other revolutionary type of technology that could no doubt be used to change the world for the better, blah, 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 was already operable. Yeah, I don't know. But this is what if you pay attention to the UFO world, attention to that shit at all?
Not like actively.
There's a guy named Bob Lazar. And
I do know that from because you talked to him.
Yeah, it was one of the weirdest conversations I've ever had. Because you're like, oh man, are you crazy? Are you full of shit? It's real.
Yeah.
Because if it is real, this thing is a special effect created. A guy who was a special effect artist. Do you remember his name, Jamie? Who made this thing for us? This gentleman. He's got a designs by Perry at Instagram, and he created this thing, and this is like a scale model of what Bob Lazar supposedly worked on. He was hired by the United States military to work at Area S4, which is part of the Area 51, like Area 51 Site S4, Site 4. Was this place where he allegedly worked to back engineer these spaceships, and the way these things moved around was exactly how this Christopher Mellon guy, or this article rather, that quoted him as describing, that they used some sort of gravity space-time bending technology. So they didn't use a propulsion system like a rocket, shoot flame out the back. They bent time in front of them and just would shoot instantaneously to wherever the fuck they wanted to go.
So you'd be like instantly be able to go.
And what's fucked is that there was an instance off of the coast of San Diego in 2004 where a Navy pilot by the name of Commander David Fravor, who I've also had on the show, experienced this thing that they call the Tic Tac UFO. They tracked it with radar. They tracked it with the camera systems on their plane, and they even have video footage of this thing. It went from 80,000 feet above sea level to 1 in a second.
Wow.
That's the amount of time that it takes radar to do the blip, 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 blip. So in that time, it traveled 80,000 feet. They have no idea how the fuck it did that. It shows no propulsion, heat signature. They took video footage of this thing, and it went from there. It took off where they couldn't even follow it with their eye, just disappeared to the predetermined destination where they were supposed to coordinate later. So it's like it's reading their tracking systems or reading where they were going. And the people that worked on the aircraft carrier were telling the fighter pilot, like, we've been seeing these things over, we see them like every couple weeks. We have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
And they just say, well, there it is. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah. I picture like an alien in that Tic Tac. He's like, whoa, slow it down, dude. You're kind of crazy right now. Like he's having a bad day in there because he's got to be having just a day. Whoever's in there, some kind of day, maybe having a day. It's a lot to. Yeah, I don't know. You think it's like a lot to just tell people? Like if they had to be like to tell like just Earth, all of us humans on Earth, to like wrap our head around what would happen?
I think, what do you say if that's all you know? Like if you are the military and all you know is that something can do these things, something can move at this speed. The New York Times had a front page article about it a couple of years ago. And basically they're saying, hey, there are videos of things moving in a way that we don't understand, that aren't exhibiting a heat signature that indicates a propulsion system. And we don't know what it is. And then there's the COVID-19 bill that just got passed. And one of the provisions in the COVID-19 bill is that they have 180 days to release all the information they have about UFOs.
That's a lot, yeah.
But I don't know if they're going to do anything with. I think they're going to.
It's funny that it's in this.
They go, yeah, we don't have anything.
bill.
Yeah,
like that's
a lot of weird shit was in the COVID-19 bill, like foreign aid. There's a lot of foreign aid to Pakistan, aid to all these countries. It's like people to get it passed. They're like, okay, we'll say yes, but I want you to do a little favor for me and put this in the bill.
Yeah,
and there's just shows you how greasy politicians are.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
yeah.
But that's allegedly what all that UFO technology is. Well, the 2017 New York Times article, in my mind, made that was a big shift, because when the New York Times is reporting about it and saying that this is major news and this is real and there's video evidence that they can't ignore, when you talk to high-level people at the government and people like Commander David Fravor, who had that infamous spotting off of the coast of San Diego, when you hear about people like that are very reputable, it starts to change the conversation in a lot of people's eyes.
Right. See, it used to be that one person was something in the sky and say, look, Martha, look, there's something up there. Now things have changed. Now we have multiple sightings, multiple modes. That is the gold standard. The gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. And so the burden of proof has shifted. It used to be the burden of proof was on the people who believed in UFOs. They saw something, prove it. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the Pentagon, to the military. Now they have to prove that these aren't extraterrestrial. And so I think there's been a sea change in the last several years. 50 years ago, there was a congressional hearing, and it was coming out of Project Blue Book. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of jokes about little green men in outer space. 50 years ago, that's the way it was. Now things have changed. People are looking at are they a threat militarily? What kinds of sensors do we have? What kind of metrics do we have? We now have frame by frame an analysis of these objects. These objects travel between Mach 5 and Mach 20. That's 20 times the speed of sound. These objects can zigzag, and we can measure the G-force inside this object. The G-forces are several hundred times the force of gravity. In other words, any person's bones would be crushed by these objects, probably drones of some sort. These objects can drop 70,000 feet in a few seconds. Think about that. It can drop immense distance in just a few seconds, and they can go underwater. This is something that we didn't realize before, but they can actually go underwater. And they also move without creating an exhaust or breaking the sound barrier. So these are things that we can now document frame by frame, look at these videotapes.
So, what was the shift? And how did you feel about UFOs, say, like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, this giggle factor, it's the third rail, of course, of your scientific reputation. You believe in these things. But the evidence is accumulating over the last several years. Now, when I was first approached by Carolyn Corey, the producer of this film, A Tear in the Sky, I was skeptical. I said to myself, come on. I mean, 5 days? 5 days you're going to look for saucers in the sky? What happens if the aliens are camera and they don't show up in 5 days? So I was pleasantly surprised when they actually found something. They actually have photographic evidence of objects that can gyrate just the way the Pentagon has said. And so we now have a sea change. A center of gravity has changed with regards to looking at these objects. We no longer simply look at one individual seeing something in the sky. No, we demand hours of videotape, multiple sightings by multiple modes. That's the gold standard.
What do you think is happening? Do you think that this is something that maybe another government from another country has created that far surpasses our abilities, or do you think that this is coming from somewhere else?
Well, the Pentagon has listed, I think, 5 different options. One option, of course, that they're weather balloons or something that's an artifact of our space program. Maybe a piece of rocket that is pinged back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's one category. Another category is anomalous weather events. They happen, and they have to be looked at very carefully. But the last option is other. That is not just the Russians or the Chinese, because these objects certainly can gyrate faster than what the Chinese and the Russians can muster, but it opened the door, possibility of other. They didn't specify what other was, but you can fill in the dots yourself. Now, one possibility for other is hypersonic drones. That in warfare now. The Russians, in the Battle of Ukraine, is actually using hypersonic drones to hit targets in Ukraine. To be hypersonic, you have to go faster than Mach 5. Anything faster than 5 times the speed of sound is called hypersonic. And so the Russians are now fielding hypersonic drones in warfare. But you see, this is something just in the last few months. These sightings, they go back decades in the past, with objects executing these gyrations decades ago. And that's why you have to take them seriously.
So the Commander David Fravor event that we talked about off the Nimitz, that was 2004. Do we have an accurate understanding about military capability in terms of like drones and propulsion systems from 2004? Or are there things that are classified that we are not going to have access to? Like, is it possible that, 18 years ago, they had the capability to have a vehicle or a drone move this way, that just that information has just not been released?
2 years ago, the United States military admitted that it stopped working on these hypersonic drones. Why? They're unstable. They zigzag. And that's why the Russians have put a premium on this technology. To evade our Star Wars program, the Russians wanted a rocket that can maneuver and therefore outwit a Star Wars system designed to shoot down these drones.
Right.
So that's why the Russians have put a priority on this, and they've now in warfare. We actually see them as a military weapon. 2 years ago, the United States military stopped its program. They're too unstable. They were not reliable, and it was not worth the amount of money to put into it because the military invested in the Star Wars program, not the anti-Star Wars program. But because Vladimir Putin announced the hypersonic drones, then the United States military said, oops, nope, we have to get into the game too. So now the United States is also working on hypersonic drones, well as the Chinese. So the Chinese, the Russians, the Americans are all working on these things. But you can see how primitive they are. We're talking about objects that defy the known laws of aerodynamics with a technology beyond what we have today. And so that's why people are scratching their heads. Whose are these things if they're not the Chinese, the Russians, or the...
One of the main points of contention is the lack of visible propulsion method. Right? There's essentially, there's no heat signature. There's nothing that we understand to be present that normally exists when something is going at a tremendous rate of speed.
That's right. Only that, these objects create no sonic booms. When you exceed the sound barrier, you create a gigantic boom that is then shatters windows and can be heard miles around. These objects can effortlessly break the sound barrier and not create a sonic boom. And they create any exhaust. We don't see any exhaust trail from these objects. So either they're an optical illusion of some sort, or they have a set of laws of physics beyond what we can muster. Now, if they are an optical illusion, if an object were to move in front of your eyes traveling at a very slow velocity, but you don't know how far they away, you may think that object is very far away from you, traveling at enormous velocities. So a weather balloon drifting in front of your eyes can simulate an object traveling at hypersonic velocities if you think that weather balloon far away from you. So how do you tell the difference? Well, you look at wind patterns. It turns out that many of these sightings, these objects defy the direction of the wind. If they are weather balloons that you confuse with a flying saucer, then they would be moving with the direction of the wind. But these objects do not do that. These objects can go against the direction of the wind. Not only that, but we have multiple sightings. If an object is very, very far away, if an object is close to you, but you think it's far away, then it's traveling at enormous velocity while it's actually just drifting in front of your eyes. How do you tell the difference? By having multiple sensors, radar, infrared sensors, visual sighting. Then you can tell how far this object is away from you, and then you can say, no, it's an optical illusion. Well, we do that now. We have multiple sightings of these objects. By radar, we know velocity, the distance. Each time it comes out to be real. And so that's why we're scratching our heads. Who has this capability? And the answer is, we don't know.
Is there anything that's theoretical that you're aware of that could be applied, like from some other planet or some other galaxy or whatever, that something that maybe we have theorized that could be responsible for the way these things are able to move?
You know, when I talk to my friends who are physicists like myself about these things, they sort of like laugh, giggle, their eyes roll up to the heavens, and they think very simple, that a rocket using conventional means would take 70,000 years to reach us from the nearest star. Therefore, these objects cannot exist. 70,000 years for a Saturn rocket traveling at 25,000 miles per hour to go from a nearest star to the planet. That's why most scientists disregard these sightings, because they defy the laws of Einstein.
But isn't that kind of like saying, like, you can't, you know how long it would take you to get a horse from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia? Isn't that kind of like saying that?
Exactly. And that's why I say that assumes that these aliens or whatever are maybe 100 years more advanced than us. But open your mind to the possibility that they are 1,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000 years is nothing compared to the age of the universe.
Right.
The universe is about 13 billion plus years old. That's how the age of the universe. And so the age of a civilization, just a few thousand years ahead of us, that is just a blink of an eye to the universe itself. And once you go to higher energies, the laws of physics begin to break down. The laws of Einstein and the law of the quantum theory break down at something called the Planck energy. Why is that important? That's what I do for a living. I work on something called theory, which lives at the Planck energy. Planck energy is 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. That is a quadrillion times more powerful than our most powerful atom measure outside Geneva, Switzerland. Any civilization that could harness the Planck energy would be able to become masters of space and time. Space and time, as we know it, become unstable at the Planck energy, which is far beyond anything that we can muster here on the planet Earth. So, we physicists theorize, how advanced do you have to be to access the Planck energy? Well, we rank them. The Kardashev scale says that there could be type 1, type 2, or type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization is maybe 100 years more advanced than us, to maybe 1,000 years, sort of like Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. They control the weather, volcanoes, earthquakes, anything planetary they control. That's type 1. Then there's type 2. Type 2 is stellar. They harness the power of an entire star, like Star Trek. Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization where they manipulate entire stars. Then there's type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam galactic space lanes. They play with black holes, like the Empire of the Star Wars series would be a typical type 3 civilization. Next question is, what type do you have to be to harness the Planck energy? The energy at which space and time become unstable, where wormholes may develop, gateways through space and time, portals through empty space. You have to be type 2 or most likely type 3. Then the next question is, how long will it take before you become type 3? Well, we are maybe 100 years away from being type 1. We're maybe a few thousand years from being from type 2, and we're maybe 100,000 years from being type 3. And 100,000 years is nothing on a galactic scale. The age of the universe is, as I said, over 13 billion years old. And so once a civilization reaches the Planck energy, that is a 3 civilization, space and time become your playground.